Hi weaving friends, in today's video I'm very excited to be sharing with you my review of the Lojan Inkle Loom. I did have a video recently that shows you how to assemble this loom, all the instructions for putting it together, so if you missed that one I'm going to link that down below and perhaps you can go and watch that one first. Or if you have recently purchased one of these looms you can jump to that video and jump straight in. Now today's video is not exactly a tutorial, but it is a little bit more than a review. I'm going to review the loom through using it. I'm going to be warping it up and then I'll be weaving on it and I'll be sharing my thoughts with you as I do so. Obviously I've been using the loom already. I've had it for a little bit of time and I've been weaving on it almost constantly, so I'm pretty familiar with it now, but I absolutely want to share all of my thoughts with you. Currently I have a croak brod band on here. I'm going to be warping up for a plain weave band today. If you like the look of the plain weave band, I am very happy to say that I will be sharing that with you. If you just follow the link down below, there'll be a review on my website as well, and that will include a free printable pattern for you so that you can weave the band as well if you like the look of it. Also, if you are brand new to inkle weaving, I have a lot of resources already for you. One of them is a YouTube series that shows you from start to finish how to warp and weave on a loom. It's not as in-depth as my online inkle weaving course, which shows you everything, absolutely everything that you need to know. Plus you get to do some Baltic pickup, you get to do some tubular weaving, you get lots of options. I also have an inkle weaving e-booklet and I will link that down below as well. And as if all that is not enough, before we actually get started, I am a Lojan reseller in Australia, and so if you are interested in purchasing one of these looms, I do have some in stock at the making of this video. I doubt that they will be there for long, but we can always order in some more. And any Lojan products, you can contact me and we can arrange for them to be sent to you. Okay, well the first thing that I need to do is cut this lovely band off the loom. I've been working on this one for a little bit. This is for a class that I'm making, which is going to be weaving croak brod on an inkle loom, which is a really fun technique. It's a little bit involved, but once you know what you're doing, it's awesome. And so I'm going to have a comprehensive class on that available sometime in the near future. And this is one of my test bands for that class. This one is definitely making it into the class because look, it's gorgeous. I just love that pattern. So anytime you take a band off your loom once you're finished, you need to just release your tension a little bit. And then you can just cut, depending on whether you want fringes or if you just want to cut close to the fabric, whatever, depends what you're using your band for. Cut it at both ends. Yippee. There is my beautiful band. This is actually the shortest length that you can do on this inkle loom, and that's what I'll be warping for today as well. Let me get all of this paraphernalia out of the way and then we can get onto the warping for the plain weave band. Now the first thing that I want to do when I'm making my warp is to sort of map out the warp with some waste yarn. That just makes it really easy to know exactly how long your band is or how long your warp is and where exactly what configuration you're going to do on the pegs in order to get that length. So as I already said, this is the shortest length that you can do. I'm pretty sure this is the shortest, yep. And so I've just gone over the top peg, over the back top peg, and then back around. This is the tensioning peg, so this is crucial in inkle weaving to make sure that you go around the tensioning peg so that you've actually got something to tension, and then around this bottom peg and then back to the start. So this waste yarn, it's not going to be part of our band. It's just a marker, much as you would use, say, on a warping board. The other thing that I have here are some heddles, and I've also got some scissors. And I've got my laptop because I'm going to follow my pattern on my laptop to know which colors I'm doing, when I'm changing, and all that good stuff that you need to know when you're following a pattern. So don't forget, this pattern will be available for all of you for free on my website, and I will link to that down below. Now, as far as the heddles go, these little heddles are available also from Lojan. These are Teachable heddles. Now, I will admit that before I got this loom, I had never used Teachable heddles on an Inkle loom. I use them all the time, of course, on table and floor looms. But for the Inkle loom, I had always made my own heddles. So I wasn't sure about the Teachable heddles, whether they'd be necessary for me or not, but I thought, hey, I'll give them a try because it's something different. And it's always good to be open to learning new things and new ways of doing things. So I purchased the heddles from Lojan. They come all joined up and you cut them apart as you need to use them. And friends, I tell you, these are a game changer, especially for me when I was doing something like croque brode, where I need more sharp. And the string heddles that I make, they can get really fluffy and grabby with the yarn that I'm using on the warp, and it gets frustrating trying to open sheds. With this, it makes the most clean, beautiful, easy to open sheds. So I recommend these, or otherwise you can make your own, whatever you prefer. Now I'm going to follow my color pattern. This band you can use 8/2 cotton. It's sort of designed for around that weight of yarn. You can use a thicker cotton if you want to. What I'm using today is a little bit of a combination according to the colors that I had. So for for most of my colors, I'm actually using what's typically sold as a crochet yarn. This is Cotton Pearl number 8, in case you're wondering. This was sent to me by a lovely lady named Erin, and she had a weaving shop in Indonesia. Her website was iweaveart.com, but the website doesn't seem to be there anymore. She does have an Instagram account that seems to be inactive. I will link to her account below anyway, just in case she's still going, because she did send me these beautiful cottons, which I really appreciated, and I've used them a lot. So these are really great for inkle weaving because they have really strong, vivid colors. They have a little bit of sheen to them. They're nice and soft. They're around an 8/2 weight. So they're just really good for this. And then just for the yellow color, I'm filling in with some 8/2 cotton because that is what I had. So I have all of my yarns down beside me on my cone stand. If you want to know how to make one of those, I'll also link to that down below. I've got a lot of links to put in today, haven't I? And I'm starting with the purple. And so on this loom, there are 2 little screws at the front of the loom, and that's just for anchoring your beginning yarn. So you can do that however you want to. I'm just doing a little figure 8, and that holds it nice and tight. And then I can start just going ahead with the warping. So my first thread is going to be heddled. So in the plain weaving for an Inkle loom, you have heddled and unheddled threads, okay? So I'm going to just anchor that there for a moment. And this is where I use my little Teachable heddles. So you can see it's got a little gap in the middle. So normally if you're using this on a table or floor loom, your thread would be going through there, but we're not using it in that way on this loom. So these 2 gaps at the ends, these are the important ones. So I'm going to put one gap, one loop over the heddle peg right here. And you can tell on this loom which one is the heddle peg because it's slightly thinner. Okay, so it looks different to the others. You can see it's smaller. And then I'm going to grab my first thread. I want to take the heddle behind there and then fold it over and put the other end of the loop also over that heddle peg right there. Then I want to pick up my yarn again, and I like to just slide my yarns in. The brilliant thing, one of the brilliant things about this loom is the pegs are extra long. They're not so long that it becomes annoying when you're warping it. They don't get in your way, but they're long enough that you can put a wider band on, which is really, really brilliant. And then once you've got the wider band on, you have these little rubbery caps. They're on the end of every single peg. They're removable as well if you need to remove them, but they stop any of your threads from slipping off. So I have been weaving extra wide bands on this loom to test it out, and they just work fabulously. There's no danger of them slipping off because of these caps, and also because the pegs are so much longer. So this is my second thread. This is going to be an unheddled one. It goes in a different direction. If you think that I'm glossing over too much, if I'm going too fast, you need to watch one of my other instructional videos first, because this is more about this loom rather than an instruction for how to use an Inkle loom. This is where I want to show you and tell you about this wonderful loom. So my unheddled thread. So the only difference with the unheddled thread is that it doesn't go over this top peg here. It still goes over the top peg at the back, but not the front one, because we're not going to heddle it. And then it just stays there next to it. It's at a very similar height to the heddled one, but it just sits there. Okay, so that's our unheddled, and you want to push that in, because what happens if you leave your threads out like this and keep warping like that? Well, your threads are probably going to cross over each other eventually and get in a bit of a tangle, but also you're making your threads longer by doing that. They'll be more slack, and we don't want that. We want everything under consistent tension, so it makes sense to just smush them over as you go, and then you sidestep those particular issues. All right, I better check my pattern for what I'm doing next, because I'm actually only warping 2 of the purple. Now, this is a personal preference, what I'm about to do here, but I like to, every time I change color, I like to cut the thread and tie the new one on. Some people will be like, oh, why on earth would you do that? Because I like to. It suits me to do it that way. Is that a good enough answer? I tell you what, if you've been online for as long as I have, sometimes that is the only answer you need to give, just because I want to, okay? So anyway, I knot those on. The knots never come undone. It's not an issue. And it makes sure that I have consistent tension, and I don't have to fiddle around with all these different threads at the bottom. Whatever it takes to justify, I'd just rather say, because I want to. It's just what I want to do. I like doing it. Everybody should do the things the way that suits them the best. So I'm anchoring this one again because it's going to be heddled. So every second thread is heddled. That's going to create our 2 shafts that we need for plain weave on an Inkle loom, shaft 1 and shaft 2. And then we follow up with an unheddled. Okay, so another thing that I want you to note about this loom while I'm warping it is how stable it is. Look at this. It comes with a clamp, but I can't think of any way that I would need to clamp it. Maybe if you had like a really slippery table, but these rubber stoppers, they stop it from moving around. I mean, I can move it like this, but while I'm warping, it's not an issue at all. So I don't need to clamp it, and I don't want to. Okay, so now I'm changing to a yellow. And I'm only doing 1 of yellow before I change back to pink. So yes, my method of tying on takes a little longer. There's like quite a few of my methods that I teach, really, especially when it comes to tying new colors on, is that I almost always break them and retie them. Most of the time. There are exceptions to that rule, but most of the time that's what I'll do. And it works really well for me. Next heddle. These heddles are just so good. You know, another thing that always troubles me in my Inkle weaving is that because I make my own heddles normally, they end up, no matter how hard I try, they end up very slightly different lengths. And so that affects your sheds. If your heddles are not all exactly the same length, you're going to get sheds that are just a little bit iffy sometimes. So because these are all exact, there is no guesswork at all. You don't have to do any tying with these heddles. You just cut them apart and use them. Oh, I love that. Okay, so this is an unheddled in pink. Let's see, what are we at next? And then we do a heddled in pink. So over the top pegs, around the tensioning peg. Something I forgot to say about the tensioning peg that I just thought of is, look, I'll put this heddle on and then we will chat about that. So that's my next heddled. Okay, so if you look at my tensioning peg, you can see that, so this is the tensioning slot, and you bring this towards you to tighten as you go. See how I've left a little bit of space there? That's really important. If you have your tensioning peg pulled all the way to the front while you're warping, where do you go from there? You don't have any space for retensioning. So I always give it a little bit of room. Now you could go a little bit further, you could go up here if you wanted that extra space, but I find about here is a good amount. Make sure as well that your tensioning peg is nice and tight. One of my favorite things about this loom, oh, you're going to hear me say this a lot, is how easy it is to tension. It's got this little star knob that is kind of plasticky, but it's also, it's not like a really slippery or lightweight plastic. It feels a little bit rubbery, just like these caps do. So when you're tensioning, it's very easy on your hands. So I think this is a great loom for someone who might have a bit of fine motor trouble. Perhaps you've got like the first signs of arthritis happening in your hands, you're getting a bit frustrated. This loom is so easy to tension. I haven't seen anything like it. I haven't used anything like it. It's quick and easy to tension. And I'm going to show you more of that when I actually start weaving, but it's relevant to the warping too, because you want to have your warping peg nice and tight when you start warping so that nothing slips. Now I did that heddled one, now I need to change to purple again. So basically folks, I'm going to continue to warp, and I think I will check back in with you when I've done most of the warping, and then I can show you some of the weaving and you'll be able to see what the band is going to start to look like and how it is actually weaving on this loom. Okay, I just finished the last thread. I always finish warping on a heddle thread, same as I started with a heddle thread for edges. So, and if you grab the pattern, the free pattern that I've got for you, this one, the first and last threads are heddled. And it's only a fairly narrow band. It's for an inkle band, it's about 65 threads from memory. Quite different to the other bands that I have been weaving recently, the really thick ones. But 65 threads makes it pretty achievable, pretty fast to warp up. All right, so that was my last heddled thread. Now, where's the end of it? Here we go. Okay, so I'm just going to join my threads together, my starting thread and my ending thread. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. I probably do it differently sometimes to other times. You just don't want to get your guide thread in there. So I'm just taking the front thread around and under. The last one has been under as well. I'm going to tie it loosely underneath. And then I bring it around to the front. And tie it in a bow there. You can get rid of your warp guide as well. And I just keep that waste yarn, use it again another time. And then we are almost ready to start weaving. But first, it's tea o'clock. Bath. You do. You smell like a dog. Okay, so I need to load the shuttle before I can start weaving. The Lojan loom comes with a belt shuttle that is actually plastic. And I was a little bit unsure about this to start with because I'd never used a plastic shuttle before, except with like the Japanese hobby loom that I have that has plastic stick shuttles. But with a shuttle for an inkle loom, you're using the shuttle as a beater and also to hold the yarn at the same time. So it's a little bit different, and I'd only ever used a wooden one before. So I thought, I don't know about this. But actually, it's fantastic. It has this really nice crisp edge here. And so it makes the beating really effortless. So you can consider me converted to plastic shuttles as well. This is not like a light rubbishy plastic. This is going to last a long time as long as I don't leave it in the sun or anything silly like that. And of course, to wind a belt shuttle, you just wind around and around. There's no figure eight, you just go around. So what I'm using for my weft yarn is the same pearl cotton that I showed you at the beginning, and I'm using it in purple because I started and finished with purple threads. And I usually, when I'm weaving an inkle band, unless I want the thread to show at the edges, which can be a design feature as well, but usually I choose one that blends in, so it makes sense to just choose the one that is actually at the edge. Bearing in mind that the weft doesn't show because we are weaving warp faced. But if you use a different colour, it will show a little bit at the edges as you go around. Now I want to tighten up my tension. When I was putting my warp on, I wanted my threads to be consistent, but not really tight. And that's always how you warp an inkle loom, or any loom really. You do the tightness afterwards, you adjust for the tightness, and now is the time to do that. So you can see my threads are all pretty consistent. insofar as I don't have anything hanging down or anything that looks really overly tight. And so I just grab the tensioning peg here, and I've got the star knob on the other side. I undo the star knob just a little bit, just enough so that I can move this tensioning peg, and then I just pull it towards me and then retighten with the star knob. Now, I like a really good tight tension when I'm weaving inkle bands. Different people like different things. And then lastly, before we actually get to the weaving, we want to separate the warp. And so let's have a look at our sheds. And this is when you can see how beautiful and clean the sheds are on this loom. So I mentioned already, this is a plain weave band, so the only sheds that we have are up and down. So for one shed, we push the threads down. See that beautiful space right there? How clean that is. And then for the other shed, we press up behind the heddles here. And again, we've got that beautiful big space to weave through. So I want to actually separate these so that my warp comes together a little bit quicker. So if I push down to get one shed, I can just pop my finger in there. The loom comes with these sticks. They're like an ice cream stick, and you can just pop that into one shed and push it down to where your warp starts. And then for the next shed, push up, put the next stick in and push down. Some people like to use multiple sticks. That's fine. I'm okay to start like this. I also, sometimes I use these cardboard strips and I just cut them into smaller bits and I'll just pop them in like that. Easy. So whatever suits you, whatever you happen to have on hand, you can use for your warp separation. Everything is now set up for weaving, so let's go ahead. I'm starting in the opposite shed to what my last stick was in. So for the last stick, it went in with the shed up, but I'm going to go down now. That gives me a base to press against. Pop my weft in, and I don't have to beat the first pick, and I'm going to leave a tail hanging out. Now up, and then I'll grab my tail a little bit and push down, and then I'll insert my shuttle and also push down. Your first rows are not going to be the prettiest ones, and that's completely normal. It takes a little bit to bring that warp together, but it does come together. Now pushing down, and also it takes a little bit to kind of figure out how close am I supposed to bring these threads together, you know, like how much draw-in should I have? And you can figure that out as you go with the band, but I do pull in quite a bit. One of the telltale signs that you haven't pulled in your weft enough is that you'll be able to see your weft in the weaving, and you shouldn't be able to see that. You should be able to just see warp. As I said before, it's okay to see it at the edges a little bit, but otherwise, no, the aim is that we don't. So easy to make the sheds with this loom. Can you see what I mean? I'm hardly even applying any pressure. It's just so simple, up and down. And such clean, beautiful sheds. So in a very fast amount of time, you can start to see a pattern on your band. It's really rewarding because that's one of the things I love about inkle weaving is it doesn't take that long to actually weave. It doesn't take that long to actually warp it, depending on how many color changes you have. And then as soon as you get into the weaving, you're seeing pattern. Now, again, the loom is sturdy enough to just sit it on a table and weave like this. If you like to have a little more pressure against your body, which I usually do, you can bring it forward a little bit so it's actually pressing against you. That's a personal choice. And then of course it has the clamp, so if you don't want your loom to move at all while you're weaving, you can use the clamp. But I mean, this is how I I like to do it. I don't actually usually like to use clamps because I like to move the loom a little bit to suit myself as I go. And when it's moving, I'm moving it. I'm deciding to move it, so it's not a problem. I'm going to show you a close-up of this band in a minute. It's so pretty. It's going to be lovely. Now, I saw some people talking online, I think it was in a Facebook group. They were saying, that this Inkle Loom doesn't look like it would be very comfortable for lap weaving. So I thought, okay, that's a good point. You know, I'm testing this loom out, so I want to test it in every regard that I can. So it's really helpful to see people's comments and questions, because it gives me things to look at and then I can tell people. So you can see a little bit of footage here of me actually weaving on my lap, which I really like to do. I've mentioned once or twice in my videos how I usually spend my evenings on this recliner in the family room with my family, and we're all doing various things. But I like to be doing something with my hands, so I will often be weaving with an Inkle Loom because it's so handy to have on your lap. Anyhow, the point was, is this comfortable to weave on your lap? Somebody thought that it might not be. Well, I can say that it is extremely comfortable to weave on your lap. I was really comfortable. The only thing that some people might struggle with a little bit, and that can be a little bit of a difficulty, is because of the length of the loom. So let's say from here to here, my arm can't reach right to the end. And this is the same with most standard size Inkle looms. So if it's a situation where you have extra heddles, or if you're lifting extra heddles back here like I do for croquebrod, then it's a little bit more of a stretch. It's still not a huge stretch because I would have my extra heddles, say about here. So I'd be reaching to there. You see my elbow's still bent. So it's not too far, it's not excessive, like I have to go right to the back there or anything. That's the only real time that I would think that it would be more difficult to weave on your lap, because of the position that you're in, a little bit less upright perhaps. And then of course, if you're weaving on your lap and you're sitting on a chair or a couch that doesn't have a recliner, a part that comes up for your legs, that could be difficult too, because I kind of prop it against the end of my legs or between my legs, and I use that recliner part as leverage to weave on the loom, and that works really well. If you didn't have that, then it might be difficult to balance the loom on your lap, I think. I actually haven't tried that. I should have tried it before this video, but I didn't. But that's just what my thoughts are on it at the moment. Okay, so I did mention during the video at various times the things that I really like most about this loom, but I'm just going to recap them now because I know that sometimes my videos get a little bit messy. Sometimes you might have missed a bit that I was talking about and you just happened to miss it. So here are the things that I really like about it. It's really sturdy, okay, so I've mentioned that already. I really like this big part here. So if you've seen my assembly video, this part comes just as one piece, a wooden piece. You need to put in the star knobs, the screws, etc. But this is just one piece. It's quite solid, and all of the pegs come out from that. I also mentioned in that assembly video that you can put the pegs on the opposite side if you're left-handed. I think that's just brilliant, brilliant for the left-handers. I know there'd be so many lefties out there going, yes, finally someone thought of me. But that's just one of the features. So anyway, I really like that, how sturdy that part makes it. And then all of the pegs, they screw into that. They're not glued. They are movable so that you can do different peg configurations. So let's say, for example, if you were like me today, you're doing the shortest configuration of warp, And let's say that you only ever really wanted to do that shorter configuration. Well, what you could do is you could actually remove these back pegs that you're not using. So the bottom two, here and here, they're stabilizing pegs, so you don't want to remove them. Also, you know, you've got your starting peg here, you've got your top peg, your heddle peg, the important ones, but the pegs that are just for extra warp length, you could remove them if they bothered you, if you didn't want them there, and if you were going to do the same configuration all the time. That would be an option that you could take. So I love that they screw in for that reason, that you can remove them, but also it makes them so sturdy. They're just strong. Everything is strong and sturdy. I also mentioned that I really like the length of the pegs, and not just the length, but the rubber stoppers, or the plasticky rubber stoppers. I can't really decide whether that's rubber or plastic. I don't know. It doesn't matter. They do the job really well that they are supposed to do. So that stops any threads slipping off. Now, of course, for a band this thin, it's not going to be an issue, but you saw my last band at the beginning of the video, and here it is. It's so much thicker. Hang on, to really understand, you've got to see it down here where we're weaving next to my little one here. So many more threads for this big band, and yet I could get them all on there, and that's kind of exciting to me, and not have to worry about them slipping off. Okay, I mentioned that it's really stable on a table even without the clamp, and that is partly because of the balance construction, but also because of these stoppers. They are on both sides for the stability pegs, okay, what the loom is actually standing on both sides. And so that just gives a really, it gives a healthy amount of tension that you can move the loom if you want to. They're not so rubbery that you're stuck here like suction cups or anything. But it also means that the loom's not going to slip, and that it doesn't move around all over the place while you're weaving. And then I also mentioned the textile heddles. Now, they're not specifically a part of the loom. They're an extra that you can purchase if you want to. But I'm telling you, these textile heddles are so good. And me, I've always been a DIYer. I've always been like, well, you know, if I've got something that I can use at home already, I'm going to use it. I'm not going to buy anything extra. I'm quite stubborn in that way, and very frugal as well. But I am super glad that I got these textile heddles. They are so worth it in the way that they make the clean sheds, and the ways that I've already mentioned with the equal lengths of them and all of that good stuff. And then my last favorite thing that I have mentioned before as well is the tensioning peg, and how easy it is to tension. So once I've woven a little way, I am going to advance the loom so that you can have a look at what that looks like as well. And I just find it so good, so easy to advance the warp and change the tension. One thing with the heddles, the textile heddles, that you might notice that I'm doing is fairly frequently when I'm changing sheds, I'm pushing the heddles back in place. They do slip down a little as you go. And most heddles will do that because the warp is moving, but I feel like the textile maybe slips a little bit more. It's not an issue because the benefits to the textile heddles outweigh that problem, and it's not really a problem. It just means that if the heddles are forward like that, you'll have smaller sheds. If they're back, you'll have larger sheds. And also, if some of them are slipping and not others, then you need to just pop them back into place, which is very, very simple to do just by touching it with your hand as you're changing sheds. I don't do it for every change of sheds, maybe every few changes depending on how they're going. And then I definitely do that when I advance the warp too, but I'll show you that in a moment. So very simply, just push them back up if they're creeping down a little bit. I've woven far enough now that I want to advance my warp. See how beautiful my tension is? I love that drum tight tension. That is how I like to weave my bands. So we go to the tensioning peg, and I'm going to use my left hand because I'm right-handed. So my right hand's going to come in and hold the tensioning peg to make sure that doesn't go too far without me. And then I'm just going to use my left to undo the knob a little bit. It starts sliding back a little bit, and you only need to take it as far as it goes to be able to pull your warp forward. So I'm still holding on to that left knob over here just as a safeguard, but I'm going to pull down my warp, and it's going down. I'm going to pull out my sticks now because they've done their job. And I don't like to go too far down. Here's the top of my band right here. I like to just, same with any of my weaving, I like to advance a little and often. I feel like that works out much better. So I've pulled that forward to where I want it, and I've taken the opportunity to just slide it over a little bit so that it's not angling out like that. And then before I tighten up again, I want to push these heddles up because they are going to move every time you advance your warp. So just push them up. That can also be done afterwards, but it's helpful to do it now because it does affect your tension as you retension. Okay, and then I'm going to grab that tensioning knob again. I want to make sure as well that none of these threads are going over right too far towards the end of the peg and getting wedged in there. That's not likely to happen with this amount of threads, but when you have a lot of threads on the peg, it might possibly happen. And then we pull that forward. Still got my left hand on the knob over here. Right hand is holding the tensioning peg in place to wherever I want it. And then I retighten very easily. It doesn't take much to retighten it. And I've got my drum tight tension again. And then I can just start back where I left off and start weaving again. Friends, there is also a band pattern that comes in the booklet that comes with this loom. You get the belt shuttle, you get all the pegs and all the stoppers and all the hardware to put the loom together. As I said, the textile heddles are a separate purchase. And if you're in Australia, you can purchase one of these beautiful looms through me. Or if you're in the US, you can grab one from the Woolery, and I'll put the link down below. Otherwise, if you're in a different part of the world, hop on the Lojan website. I will also link that down below, and you'll be able to see the stockist that is closest to you. But I do wholeheartedly recommend this loom. I think it is absolutely beautiful, and it is my new favorite Inkle loom. Don't forget to check out my 5 million links down below. It seems like it's going to be that many now. And if you have any questions about the loom or you need some pricing, just shoot me a message. Remember, I'll have the pattern for this band down below. And until next time, happy weaving.